decide you want to ask a question at a time, it's going to be recorded, just so you know that. If you don't like your picture up on the screen, you can shut it off at any time. If everybody puts their name up and the year you graduated, that make it a little bit easier. And then we'll just start from there. I just want to thank Ms. Prezelski, Ms. Kirchenheiter, and Mr. Schuberth for allowing me to do this. They had asked me a few weeks back if I was interested. And of course, if you know me, I said, sure, why not? I'm interested in talking about personal finance. That's kind of my jam. So I got no problem talking about it. Let me just first say as a disclaimer that this presentation is just based on my own opinions, and I do not represent MSJ as I speak here tonight. You've probably heard this one before. I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm not a tax professional. This is just my own presentation based on the studying I've done, the reading I've done, the books I've read, everything, the teaching, and the way I've kind of done this for the past decade, and the way I do my own personal investments. So it's based on my risk level and my understanding of the topic, okay? So that's just my little disclaimer so you know. The first thing I just say is, personal finance to me is personal. I mean, you have to be comfortable with what you're doing when you decide to invest. And when you decide to run your life financially, how you want to run it, it's very personal. So a lot of the stuff, like I may say, you may not be comfortable with, or you may not feel that way. And that's kind of where you have to find, what's the way you want to invest? What's the way you want to save? It's different for everybody, but there are better ways to do things. And that's kind of what you have to learn. So let me share my screen. I've got a little slide presentation. And I think the best thing to do is, as we go through it, gentlemen, if you have any questions at any point after every slide, I'll just pause a little bit and we can kind of talk about that slide. Some of it's very general and some of it's very specific, but I'd be glad to just stop at any point instead of waiting till the end and trying to go back and figure out which slide you might be talking about. Can everybody see this slide here? MSJ, good, thanks. Okay, so it's MSJ Alumni Personal Finance Night. Again, welcome aboard, and my name's Julius Prezelski. The first slide's all about what I call the psychology of money, because really money is it's psychological, it's behavior. So we have seen stories of average earners out there who end up dying, and all of a sudden they got millions of dollars. I just read one about a janitor, and I think he was a gentleman that worked on cars, and he ended up with $8 million. And then on the other side, we have well-educated people, and they end up with a heck of a lot less, and they made a lot more all the way through. And everybody kind of throws their hands up and said, why, how's that possible and why? Luck in some cases, pick the right stocks, invested correctly, maybe, invested early in their life. And in other areas, it's just all about behavior and their habits. So like even when I teach it to the young guys at St. Joe, I talk about changing your behavior, changing your habits. Because if you can't save, you can't invest. That's the bottom line. If everything you make, you spend because you want stuff, then you can't get where you want to go in the long run. And I think everybody would like to say it someday, I'd like to stop working and do what I want when I want. And to me, when you can do that, that's when you hit happiness. When you've got enough money that you can do what you want when you want, then you're in great shape. So I've been reading a bunch of books. I've read some books in the past on this. One I'm reading now is called The Psychology of Money. It's an excellent little read. I've read behavioral finance books, which just really talks about how we're wired as humans, and that, the way we're wired is the way we do things. And it's not that we're bad or you're making bad decisions. It's the way we work as human beings. So one of the good examples is when the stock market's going up, everybody's pouring money into the market, right? I don't want to miss this train, I'm in. But when the stock market's going down, you hear these people going, well, I'm taking my money out of my 401k. And I'm like, whoa, why? Like, where are you going? Like, we do the opposite of what you should do because we're wired that way. So like I'm telling everybody, when the market's going down, just keep dollar cost averaging, keep putting your money in. If you have more money, put more money in. If you got 30 years to go, it's going to all average out in the end anyway. It's a blip on the screen. So don't get caught up in the ups and downs of the market. Just keep doing it, every paycheck and putting whatever you're going to put into the market. And it all works out. But behavioral finance shows us that we kind of get stuck in this because the way we're wired, and we do the opposite, or we listen to our buddy because our buddy's telling us to buy, Bitcoin or Tesla or whatever it is. And we're like, well, heck, he must know what he's talking about. I'm not that smart. I better follow him. Yeah, when the stock goes down, you're like, why did I listen to him? But we all do it. We've all been there before, right? And then I always think financial mistakes, they don't go away quickly. And so for my seniors at St. Joe, like I'm really harping on those guys to pick the right school, the best university at the best possible cost. Because coming out with 70,000 in loans and making 40 teaching history, to me, that's a disaster. That was a bad decision. You know, you're putting off retirement, you're putting off buying a house, you know, you're putting off a lot of things because you're so far in debt. So like we've talked about that a lot. It's about getting to the right school at the right cost. And even for some kids, it might even mean community college for 2 years. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of different ways to get where you want to go in life. And it's not always a straight path. And then the last thing I always tell the kids, and I think they like this, I always say, wealth is invisible, but debt is visible. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people out there who drive the big cars, drive the fancy, you know, have a fancy boat, have a place at the beach, have a big house, and they're up to their ears in debt. The other people, the guy who drives a normal car, lives in a normal house, all of a sudden he retires and he's got 2 and 3 million in the bank, and you're scratching your head. Well, yeah, he didn't buy all the stuff. He just lived a normal life, kept investing, and did it. And like, even when I get raises, I can tell you, I put more of my raise into my retirement, and I don't just spend it because it's coming. Since, you know, I was at St. Joe now, 24 years, I really haven't changed my lifestyle. And my financial position is really, really good between my wife and I. And I still haven't changed. I live the way I've always lived. I negotiate. I don't buy, you know, new cars. I don't lease cars. I buy pre-owned because it's just stuff. It's not going to really help me in the long run. You know, I want to get to retirement. That's my goal. And ultimately, I want to help my 2 daughters. I want to have what's called generational wealth. I want to pass wealth down to them. And so that's kind of my lead in here. Any thoughts or questions on that? No? Okay. So like, I kind of think like, where does personal finance start for a lot of people? You guys are in school or you just got out of school. You've been out for a while. I think it really starts with budgeting. Most people start and they're like, wow, you know, I'm getting paid X amount of dollars. And all of a sudden you're just spending. And at the end of the month, you're like, whoa, it's all gone. Where'd it go? I really enjoyed myself, but I got nothing to show for it. So I really believe you have to start a budget. I don't care if you use like YNAB app, use the Mint app, you just use your own spreadsheet. I have a daughter, first year out of college. She just did a basic Excel spreadsheet. She knows where every dollar's going and where every dollar comes in. You can even use, I guess, I know Capital One has their own stuff online where you can hook your bank accounts to them. I'm not really into that. I just do it myself, but I would set up a budget. That's kind of the first thing I do. And in budgeting, obviously you got to know your net income. You know, what do you have to spend after taxes, after you put in your 401k, what's left? At that point, you're going to break everything down into fixed and variable expenses. So for me, I always wanted to build an emergency fund. You know, you can hear a lot of stories how much you should have an emergency fund. You know, I always think you should have a month or 2 or 3's salary set up just in case something happens. I don't want to go to my credit card and use it unless I really have to. I want an emergency fund. Okay. So like I said, a 401k to me is just part of, comes right off the top. I don't even consider that. So it's coming right out of my check every 2 weeks and it's in. And then I always fund a Roth IRA, which we'll talk about later. Some areas you can really help yourself with, I think, for young guys, eating out. I hear teachers all the time talk, well, I eat out 3 times a week. And I'm like, how do you afford that? It's really expensive to eat out. And if you add up eating out all that time, yeah, it tastes good, but there goes your money that you could have been saving. So I really think you have to think about how much you eat out. Subscription services I read about all the time, how people get sucked in and they don't cancel them. So I know I had DirecTV for the last 24 years. And I kept telling my wife for the last 2 years, you know, DirecTV is terrible. They're not offering anything. I don't watch this stuff. I'm paying $150. Why am I doing this? And finally I cut it. It took me 2 years of complaining, but I finally said, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm going to Hulu for $50 or whatever it is a month. You know, I don't watch that much TV anymore, but what I watch, it's on Hulu or Amazon. So I don't really need the other stuff. Then if you have loans, I always talk about getting those things paid off. I know I have one little car loan left here that I'm paying off, and I'm paying it off as fast as I can. I want to be out of it. I hate car loans. You know, it's nothing but a depreciating asset as far as I'm concerned. Number 4, I call it the pain of paying. If you have trouble with credit cards, put the credit cards away. I know this is hard for you young guys. Put the cash in your pocket, right? When you go to buy, pay with cash. Tell me how that feels. Because I guarantee for most people, it hurts a lot more because you can see the bills coming out of your pocket. You can't see a credit card. You swipe, you tap, and it's gone. And at the end of the month, you look at the bill and you're like, oh my God, who spent all that money? Like I tell my wife that sometimes, like, who spent all that? I didn't. And she's always like, well, yeah, we were buying this, honey. And I'm like, okay, we should pay with cash maybe, even though I don't. I'm big into the credit card game. I love points on credit cards. So I'm constantly amassing points, but I know what I can afford and can't afford. How many credit cards do you have? You know, I've read an article that says the average credit card, six credit cards per person today. And the average credit card debt is around 6,000, carrying a $6,000 balance. That's pretty crazy. I carry no balance. I pay it off in full. I only can buy what I can afford. You know, if I want a TV, I got to save for it so then I can pay it all off. But I want the points. That's just me. I want points on the credit card. Ways to save, I think. I don't buy Starbucks every day, even though I like Starbucks. I treat myself though, but I don't buy it every day. I got off Verizon once I realized Verizon was crushing me, and I went to T-Mobile, and I got $30 a month per phone line. That saved me a lot of money. Like I said, got rid of my cable. I cut my telephone at home. I don't have a line in the house. We all have cell phones, right? And people go, well, it was only 25 bucks a month. Yeah, if you add 25 bucks a month up and nobody calls me on my landline, so why would I keep that? So I kind of like just keep thinking about, you know, ways you can cut those bills. Car insurance. I've had 5 different car insurance companies over my lifetime. I finally got to Erie. Erie's probably one of the cheapest out there, but you can't have accidents and claims. So for me, I kept moving until I found the cheapest insurance because I don't want to pay more than I have to. And then car buying, I don't lease. I don't really believe in leases. I can show you the math. Leases are not a good deal. If you're loaded and you like new cars every 3 years, go for it. But if you're on a budget, a car lease is never going to end. You're going to be paying one the rest of your life. I'd rather buy a car pre-owned, pay it off as quick as I can, and then own the car outright and have no loan payments, maybe for 5, 6 more years or as long as I can drive it. That's kind of my goal. And the last thing I always say is buy experiences, guys, not stuff. Go do something with your life. Like for me, I like to travel. I like to go see places. I'd rather do that than buying another, 60-inch TV for the house. That's not that important for me because I never forget my experiences. For me, when I went to Europe, I never forgot that experience. Yes, it cost me money, but I like to buy experiences again, not stuff. Any questions on that or any comments? Anybody wants to talk about anything on that slide? Welcome, Mr. Andrews. Good to see you tonight.
Good to be seen that the St. Joe basketball team destroyed the Loyola Dons. I want to give you an official report on that. High five.
A Zoom high five on that.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, let me let a couple more guys are trying to get in. So I'll go to the next slide. If you have debt, we talk about this all the time. How do we get out of it? If you only have one job and you don't have any side gigs, then there's 2 basic methods to get out. One's called the snowball method and the other is called the avalanche method. The first one, the snowball, would say to pay off those smaller debts first. So if you had a credit card with 500 on it, another with 1,000, another one with 3,000, you'd go after the one with the smallest balance. Only reason is because it's a psychological good feeling. So that goes back to the first side, the psychology of money. It makes people feel better when they get out of debt quicker. So that's the way most professionals would tell you to pay down debt, is to go after that snowball method, pay the one with the smallest balance off. Don't worry about the interest rate and feel like you've accomplished something as soon as you get that first one paid off. If you don't like that and you really want to save money and you're into the dollars and cents, then do the avalanche. Go after the one that has the highest interest rate because that's actually going to cost you more in the long run mathematically. So again, when I teach the kids this, we talk about, whatever you feel is best for you. I don't think there's a wrong way. I just think we want you to get out of debt and get out of the credit card stuff because the credit card debt, I see it all the time. I hear stories all the time, and it just puts people a lot of pressure on families, puts pressure on marriages and credit cards. Like we said, you don't feel the pain of paying because all you're doing is swiping and tapping and you have no control. And that's why you got to kind of think about what credit cards do to you And if you have a problem with them, like I said, pay cash, put them away. Don't take them with you at certain times. You just have to be able to say no. Okay. Again, behavior, big thing. Questions on that? Thoughts?
I have a question.
Sure. Josh?
Yeah, so I guess kind of going off like the paying down debts, say you just graduated and you have student loans and right now there's no interest on it and it's kind of delayed. At least kind of that's what like the US is doing. So what should, or I guess like what would your advice be of, should I be paying that down even though I'm not accruing any interest, or should I just use what I would be paying for those loans and kind of like put in an IRA or investment account to kind of like not just, because basically I have that free, it's almost free money if it's, you know, loans I don't have to pay interest on.
Sure. Yeah, it's a tough question because like I said, it goes back to your personal feeling about finances. For me, I don't like the feeling of debt. So for me, I would be paying that down as quick as I could. Some professionals might say, hey, listen, if you think you can get 7% in the market, maybe you should put some in the market and maybe you're only paying 2% on your loan. You're 5 ahead, right? I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think you have to be comfortable with whatever answer you decide to do, and you can live with the consequences. So if the market doesn't do well in the next year and we lose 10%, you're like, wow, that didn't work out. Well, that's a risk you take, right? That's a risk we all take. So for me, I would say start paying it down slowly but surely, but always have some cash on the side for emergencies. I don't know if that answers you totally, Josh. Again, I think it goes back to your personal feeling. Good question though, because it comes up all the time. You know, one thing about student loan debt, if you're on the new one, you're coming out with about 2% interest. That's pretty cheap. I don't know if I'd rush to pay that one off. I worry more about credit card debt. I worry about car debt more than anything because those are much higher, right? Especially credit card debt. It's unsecured. What, 18% going up? That's pretty dangerous if you're 2,000 or 3,000 in. And I've seen a lot of college kids go in debt quickly. You know, when I went to school, a little before you guys, they used to hand credit cards out to everybody. Hey, here's a free t-shirt, sign up, we'll give it to you. Okay, I'll take one of those. You know, I didn't have to do wash for a while if I got enough t-shirts. So here's about going into credit. You know, what is credit? Obviously, it's the ability to spend somebody else's money. It's the ability to borrow. It's not a debit card, as I tell the kids in my class. It's somebody else's money. There's no security in it, which means they're going to charge you high interest rates because if you go out and enjoy life on your credit card and you can't pay it off, they can't get it back. There's no asset to recover. So it's really important to understand that's why credit card debt is so expensive. You know, it's important though, because if you don't have credit, you don't build a history, you don't build your reporting and score. Well, how are you going to get a car loan? And then you'll see if you don't have a lot of history or a good report, your car loan is going to be probably twice what everybody else's is. So I know like last time I went to get a car loan, I got 0% interest. And my daughter happened to say to me, how'd you get 0% interest, Dad? And I'm like, well, that's what happens when you have good credit. She goes, what happens if you don't? I said, 4%, 5, 6, 7, 8 going up. Yeah, they'll give you a loan maybe, but you're going to pay, you know, a lot more than everybody else. And that adds up to a lot of money on cars today, especially with the average car running at about $30,000. You guys might not know this, but car insurance now looks at your credit report today. If you have a bad credit score, your car insurance is going to be higher because you're considered more risk. And they've proven that, so they're allowed to do it. Apartment leases. Some places won't give you an apartment lease if you don't have a good credit score. Maybe some of you guys had your parents sign off on it for you, and that might help you, but it's still a possibility. Obviously, a mortgage, obviously, anytime you borrow, and if you have a good credit score for anything, you're going to get cheaper debt. And then ultimately, some jobs can be tied to credit scores today. I know the government looks at credit scores. A lot of the banking institutions will look at credit scores. You know, I don't know if I'd want to hire a banker who has a low credit score. That might scare me. So I think credit's really important today, but just starting out, building a history, building a report, and eventually your score goes up. So hand in hand with that slide goes this little slide here, talking about how they break down your credit. The biggest thing is your payment history. So that's 35% of your score. That is just a matter of time. There's nothing you can do about it. Like if you're a young guy at college and you have your credit card, you know, it's your first year, it's going to take time to build that. How much you owe on the credit is 30%. So how much you're using that is going to be in, you know, that's the two big chunks right there. And then everything else is very minor. But those are the two big things. So really getting a credit card, putting something on it, paying it off on time every month, not going over the credit limit they give you, never being late, not bouncing a check. If you do those things, your credit score will rise pretty quickly. Okay. Like I tell the kids in class, they said, well, if I get a credit card, I won't be able to spend a lot. I said, okay, you can let your parents spend on your card for Christmas and they can pay you and you can pay it off. The credit card company doesn't really care. You're still building a report by putting money on it and it's being paid off. That's all they care. Okay. And then on the right-hand side is your credit number, your credit score. So it usually goes from 300 up to 850. There are some new ones that are going to 900, but normally they go to 850. And a lot of people think like, okay, what if I have a score of 800? Does that give me a better, lower interest rate, let's say on a new car, than if somebody has an 840? No, as long as you're in that category of excellent, you all get the same rate. And that's how it works. I would say it's really important here when you get close to a score like excellent, you're between good and excellent, you want to raise your score higher, especially if you know you're going to get a house loan, especially if you know you're going to get a car loan. That will enable you to bring your rate down 0.5%, maybe 1%. You never know. And over years, that can save a ton of money for you. And then obviously you put that money into investments or something else. So that's another reason why you want a good credit score. You don't want to waste money here. Questions on that? Go ahead, Josh. I think Josh with Pereira got a question.
Joseph, yeah.
Sorry.
I was wondering, I've heard there are several different services that let you check your credit score where it is currently, but also that some of them, just by looking or using that service, you might drop your score immediately just by using it. Is there a service you use?
I'll give you my experience, Joe. I have a Capital One credit card and I can look at my score for free automatically. They used to charge you a lot in the old days to look at it. Now it seems like more people are giving it away for free. So in the old days, your report was always free. You can always see your report. So all the data behind the score. And then the score they used to charge you for. Now it seems like they got in a lot of pressure. Everybody's giving the score away. I would not pay for it. I don't think it's going to drop your score, Joe, because it only drops your score when a credit company looks at it and is going to make you an offer, like a new credit card. Because there's something called the hard inquiry and there's something called soft inquiries. Okay. So there's a little dissemination between the two, but normally that should not drop your score. You know, if you go out and let's say you go to buy a car and you go to 3 banks and they pull your credit score, that for a bit might get a little touchy on your credit score because they might be thinking, well, what's he doing? He's looking to open up 3 different lines of credit here. You know, they don't really know that you're looking to pull a credit score for maybe a new car. So I'd be careful how many times you do that. Today, you can look everything up online though. You can see almost anything you want and who's offering what. So I think it's a lot easier than it used to be. Good question.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Basic ways to improve credit scores. And I said some of these, obviously pay off your balance each month. Do not carry a balance. Okay. I've heard people say, well, I'm just going to pay the minimum. Well, your credit score is going to get slammed here. Plus you're going to be paying huge interest. You've got to get out of debt on credit cards. These are terrible for people. Okay. Especially if you can't control your behavior. Don't max out the card. Most cards have a limit. So let's say my credit card is a $5,000 limit. If I go over that limit, they'll let me keep charging, which is crazy, but it'll also hurt my credit score. And they don't tell you that. So that's one of the things. The big one is credit utilization. If you have a $5,000 limit and you spend more than 30% on that any month, then you put the credit companies in a nervous position. Their theory is when you're going over 30% of the limit, then your score goes down because now you're starting to spend too much. If you have multiple cards, add up the total limits, multiply by 30%, you shouldn't be going over that amount per month. And, you might say, wow, if you have a $10,000 limit on a card and you're spending $3 a month, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. Like I told you guys, I put everything on my credit card. I try to amass points. I'm big into the points game. So I have to be careful that I don't go over that limit because that will hurt your score. Too many cards will hurt your score too, obviously. You're holding 8 cards in your pocket. That means you can lose your mind at some point and start charging across the board. That the credit card companies don't like, because that can make them nervous. Hold on, let me let a couple guys in here. Don't close your old cards. I would just put them in your pocket. So if you've got 8 cards and you're like, okay, I'm not using 3 of them, but you've had them for a bunch of years. If you close them, it's kind of hurting your payment history, because the net payment history goes away and your score will go down initially for a while until you build payment history back up. So I'm not a big believer in having, I have 3 cards. That's all I keep. I won't take any more. And then I pay my bills electronically now because I'm so worried about the mail. I mean, stuff is literally taking weeks to get there. And I heard somebody say, well, the company wouldn't do anything about it because it got there late. And they won't. They don't really care. That's your responsibility. So for me, I pay electronically the day before it's due to make sure there's no issues. It goes through and it doesn't hurt my credit score. You know, again, don't bounce checks, don't be late, don't go over the limit. Those are all things that if you do those things, your credit score is going down, guarantee it. Questions on improving your credit score?
I don't have something on the credit score per se, but you have mentioned a couple of times about credit cards and points, and you're into all that. So for the benefits of a credit card, what kind of credit cards do you think offer like the best kind of reward? Something where you're getting like airline miles, something where you're getting a certain percent cash back, some sort of point system like you're talking about?
Yeah, so everybody, like I said, it's personal. I'm big on points, so I use Capital One for my airline miles because I can fly on any airline with no blackout dates. And I use Hilton because I want to stay at the Hilton. So I kind of use those 2 cards, my major cards. My daughter's the younger generation, like you guys. She loves cash back. So she says, I just want cash back. So she cashes it in every month. And I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I just think you got to decide what's best for you. I wouldn't pay for a card though. I don't pay a yearly fee. I go on nerdwallet.com. I'd look up the ones that say no fee. I'd see which, they even tell you the credit score you need to get them. And that's the one I'd apply for. So nerdwallet.com is a good site. That's good question. Yeah, that's just me, how I do it. Again, it's personal. You got to be comfortable doing it that way. Let me see. Any other questions? I'm just kind of looking at chat too. I'm not going to say a lot about this, but obviously I think this is pretty simple. If you have a college loan, like maybe Joe was asking here, the faster you can pay it off, the better. That's ultimately what it is. So even if it's $200 a month and you give them $250 a month, you're going to pay it down a lot quicker, obviously, and you're going to get out of debt faster. And then you can go do what you want with that extra money. And maybe that's investing. Maybe that's buying your first car. Maybe that's buying your first house. A lot of kids are getting out of college with big debt, and they're not going to buy a house until their mid-30s at least. They won't be able to afford it because they're going to have so much debt. It's crazy. And imagine, marrying your significant other and you both got $60,000 in debt. I don't think you're getting a loan. I don't see that happening. Not unless you're a doctor, right? Because you're just not going to have enough income coming in. So for me, I pay down these debts as quick as I can, get out of it and feel good about it, that you don't have, debt hanging over your head. This is just a basic little slide about, building emergency savings first. I always say have an emergency kitty on the side. I put my money in a money market. I don't have a savings account, so I only use checking and money market. Money market pays you a little more interest. If you're working for a company and they have a health savings account, that's a great way to get a little money built up in case you get sick and you can pay the bill, because we know a lot of insurances don't cover you 100%. Now, you guys that are in college, you can stay on your parents' plan until you're 26. Stay on it. It doesn't cost your parents another dime. So like my daughter's 24. She's going to be on our plan 2 more years, even though our company will cover her. It doesn't cost us any more for the 4th person than if we took her off and we had only 3 on the plan. So she's going to stay on it. Invest in your 401k. If your company comes out and they say, listen, we're going to give you 4%. If you put 4% in, do it. Like last I checked, if anybody's a math guy, if you put 4% in your retirement and they give you 4, that's 100% return on your money right there. It doesn't matter what the stock market does. You just made 100%. It's your money, right? I know St. Joe, actually, if Mr. Andrews is still there, we have a pretty good retirement plan at St. Joe. They've done a really nice job with it. So I've maxed out my retirement for a long time. So my goal, I'm a little older than you guys, so we can put basically 25,000 in a year. I'm actually putting 25,000 in a year, and that's how I get to retirement. But I'm very disciplined. I don't waste money. Okay, I negotiate everything. I don't even care if it's a belt. I negotiate it. I want a coupon. Okay. 529 plans, we won't go into that. Be when you get your first child, you start putting money away for college. I did that for both my kids. Knock on wood, I got lucky. My kids both got into Maryland, so we're in-state tuition. And then a Roth IRA would be outside of your 401k. You guys, if you have a job that you pay taxes on, you could put after-tax dollars into a Roth IRA and put it in a mutual fund, maybe at a Vanguard or somewhere. That will never be taxed. Your profits on a Roth IRA never get taxed. A 401k, it's pre-tax dollars. You will get taxed later somewhere when you take it out in retirement. I got them both. My wife has them both. I've been doing my Roth IRA since I'm 25, and I started with $50 a month, and I just kept building until I maxed it out. So today the max on Roths are 6,000. My daughter's, like I said, 24. She's putting 200 a month in. I got a college daughter. I make her put 100 a month in. And they always kind of complain like, well, we don't see the money. I go, yeah, that's the point. That's the whole point. You don't want to see the money, but you'll see it in about 45 years and it'll be a lot of money. Questions? So these are kind of the buckets. Same thing I talked about, pre-tax versus after-tax versus taxable. I won't say a lot about this. If you guys are working out there, you probably have a 401k. St. Joe, we have a 403b. Same thing, it's pre-tax. One thing people don't realize, yeah, Mike. Sorry, Mike.
Hey, no, you're good. Hey, everyone, I'm Michael Bodley, 2012. I feel like I'm the old man of this group, not you. So it's good to see everyone again. Thanks for this. Just a quick thing. So I'm starting a new job actually at a startup, right? And I'm losing my 401k as a result of that. And there's a pretty solid, it makes sense for me to do it compared to like salary and bonus and stuff, what I was previously making. So you said you're doing 25 previously, which I assume is like maxing out the 401k, then maxing out an IRA. And I'm planning on maxing out the IRA, but having no access to the 401k is obviously a pretty big loss, like from a tax perspective.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? Like I was kind of thinking maybe low cost, like ETFs tracking the S&P or.
Yeah, I'll go to that right now. And when I said 25,000, you can put 19.5 in a year. Plus, I'm over 50, so you can do what's called the catch up. I can stick an extra 5 in, so I can get to 5 or 6, whatever the number is. And then the Roth I love because I'm not paying any tax on that when I get out. When I start taking that money, and you can actually use the principal off the Roth if you ever wanted to borrow on it and use it. It's yours. You can't do that on your 401k. You have to wait till 59 or whatever it is, 55 and a half, whatever the number is. And you know what? Let's just jump to that then. So what would I do? I'm big into, I used to be a T. Rowe Price guy. I hope there's no T. Rowe Price workers here. I had all my money, all my wife's money in T. Rowe. And I started looking at this fee chart called 401kfee.com. And I was like, yeah, I really like T. Rowe Price, but they charge a little higher fee. It's not real high, but let's say it's 0.5%. I went to Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab, and I'm in mutual funds that are literally charging 0.03. If you look at the amount of money I have and you extrapolate it out over the next 25 years of my life, if I live that long, it literally adds up to over $200,000. So like 0.47 less of a percent on hundreds of thousands of dollars would add up to big bucks. So if you go onto this site, and I give you the slide presentation if anybody wants it, go to 401kfee.com. You put in the different fees from the two different companies, the number of years and the amount of money, and it shows you the amount. And people don't realize a 0.5% difference is mind-boggling amount of money, especially for you young guys. It's going to add up to hundreds of thousands in 40 years, guarantee it. So yeah, I'm a big Vanguard guy. I'm big on what I call the total market US funds. I want to be totally diversified. I don't want to sit there and be picking all these different mutual funds. It's way too hard. I used to do it though. Trust me. I used to buy it and sell it and trade it when they let you. Now they don't. Now you have to buy an ETF. So I own the US Total Market Fund. It's an index fund. I own an international index fund, and I own a bond fund. You're pretty diversified there. You're pretty diversified. So honestly, I'd look at Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. I would take the big index funds. and pay the lowest fee possible.
Are there any, thanks for this. And like having covered hedge funds recently as a journalist, like I understand fees really well. And I agree with you that, a lot of people don't understand compound interest over time, right? And how big of a deal that makes. That said, are there any actively managed mutual funds or something similar that may charge a higher fee that you have found to be worthwhile as opposed to these really low cost passive stuff?
You can actually go to Vanguard and you could pay them to actively manage your portfolio of funds. They charge 0.30. So even if you took their index funds of 0.03 and the 0.30 on it, you're still cheaper than T. Rowe Price, in my opinion. And they'll actively manage it every quarter. They'll rebalance for you. I've actually done that with one of mine because I can do it, but I'm kind of want to enjoy life too. And I kind of said, he's like, well, if you want to do it, I'm like, you know what? It's pretty reasonable fee. And I'm like, let's go for it. He said, listen, if you don't like after a year, you can basically cut the contract up and move on and you can stay in all our funds. You know what? It's kind of peace of mind. I don't want to waste 2 hours a day looking at funds because I will. That's the kind of guy I am. I'll start watching them and thinking I'm smarter than everybody, and you're really not. Nobody has the crystal ball here in investing. Trust me.
Hey, me too. Well, that's super helpful. Thanks again.
Okay. Yeah. So like the old saying is time in the market matters, not market timing. If you think you're going to dive in and dive out, you're going to get caught. I'm telling you, I wouldn't do that. When the market's down, don't worry about it. When the market's up, just don't worry about it. Just keep investing. Don't sit there and try to pull the money out like you know more than everybody. Because what you find out happens is people pull the money out, then they can't get back in and they miss the next couple big up days. And then you just missed a huge up. And you lose. That's what happens. And I've tried it before. Trust me, it doesn't work. Let's see, just quickly. So we went over that. Like I always tell people this because I think a lot of people don't understand this mathematically. When you invest into a 401k, and let's say you put just $100 a check in, it's actually not going to cost you $100 because you're actually saving tax dollars. It's pre-tax. So if you were in, let's say, the 22% tax bracket, and you put $100 in, you're going to be paying basically, it's going to cost you like $88, right? No, I'm sorry, $78. It's tax money you would have been paying anyway, because Uncle Sam's just going to take more from you if you don't put it in here. So I tell the kids all the time, like, guys, if you're making good money here and you're putting money in this, you're bringing your taxable income down. That's what it is. It's pre-tax. So let's say you're making, even if you're making 85,000 and you put 10,000 in, now you're making 75. That 10,000 multiply it by 0.22, you just saved that amount of money because you would have paid that in tax. So it's not dollar for dollar. You actually are saving money by doing this. You're using what Uncle Sam lets you do. That's why you do it.
So do 401ks, are they credits or deductibles on
it's
taxes?
It's pre-tax. So it comes right off your income level. So it drops you right down. Yeah, that's why, like for me, I mean, I shouldn't say this too loud, but I'm gonna be honest with you because that's just the way I run things. My wife and I qualified for the free money, and my wife was very mad. She said we should send it back. We don't need it. I said you can't send it back, honey. The only reason we qualified is because we both maxed out our 401ks, right? That got us under that limit. If I didn't max those out and I was just spending it, we wouldn't have got that free money because we would have been above the 150. That's the only reason. And that comes down to, tax strategy and understanding this. And then I got lucky because that's where they put the number. It's a shame, but we shouldn't have got the money. We didn't need the money. I got a job. I knock on wood. I still have my job. The school's still doing okay, right? And I feel bad because it's crazy. But that's how it works. And that's, you can only work the system legally based upon what's there in front of you. And that's how I do it, right? And then here is just the last graph, kind of shows you, and I probably should have put one where maybe you only invested 1,000 a year, but it kind of just shows you, and my whole thing here is not the numbers, it's the curve going up on that blue line. So it's this guy here, right? Notice that curve, it just starts going straight up, really like the last 10 to 15 years of your life. And I never really understood this when I was 25 and I was investing. I was 30, I was 35. And then one day when I was in my mid 40s, I sat down and started kind of running numbers on paper. Like if I keep putting this in, I get 6%. What's that going to do? And then I kind of looked and I was like, oh my gosh, the last 10 years, compounding will bend that curve fast. And you'll see why people a normal guy can get into the millions easily, 1 to 2 million, no problem. And especially if your significant other, whoever you marry, is putting their money into, you can get to 2 million easily at 7% interest over a 40-year period. It's definitely doable. But again, it goes back to behavior. You got to be willing to not spend when you're young, cut the debt, start saving, and just say no to certain things, and you can still live a very good life. But that's what I would say. Other than that, let's see. I think that's pretty much it. And I think that's a lot. Let me take that off. Oh, here's always a great one. I show the kids, I'm sorry. They always think they can outsmart the market. So they say, oh, Mr. P, I want to buy large cap value. So I show them this chart, and this is a chart of the last, I guess, like 20 years. And it shows how each sector in mutual funds have done. So if you know anything about mutual funds, so I kind of tell them this. I said, pick a fund and then start drawing a line. And they'll start drawing a line on large cap value. And then when we're done, I'll be like, well, what do you notice about your line on large cap value? Oh, I missed that one. Sorry. Oh, way down there. My bad. Wherever it is. Okay. Losing my mind here. Looking at colors. Oh, way down there. Right. And there and there. So if you think you can buy a specific style of mutual fund and you look at that line over 20 years, it kind of shows you like, whoa, it's really not consistent at all. There's good years and there's bad years. And so that's why I like going back to, I think maybe that was Mike, you said it. I buy index funds now. I used to buy all these different ones and play the game and think I was smarter than everybody. And I realized after a while, 93% of mutual funds that are actively managed, when they're managed more than 15 years, they do not beat index funds over 15-year runs and greater. Short term, they might, but over the long run, they're not beating the passively managed index funds. And a lot of it has to do with fees because they charge fees and they can't outguess the market. Nobody knows where the market's going. So like, I don't pick large cap. I just go into large index funds that buy all this stuff. And then you get a better average, and you're not going to be, when the market's way up, you're not going to get the way up one, but when the market's way down, you're not going to be way down. You're going to just be kind of a more smooth glide path going out. And that's really all I have, which I think is kind of a lot anyway. Questions? Anybody want to talk? Throw anything out there?
Hey, Mr. P, I do have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Any truth, as far as you can tell, to rumors of student loans being forgiven in the near future due to COVID? Because generally, I'm paying mine off as fast as I can, but I had a couple of friends who said maybe hold off for a second because they're looking at maybe forgiving some of that debt for free. You heard me think about that?
Yeah, Biden keeps saying he's not giving 50,000. Everything I've read, he said, no way in heck, I'm not doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 10,000 and let you get rid of 10. Is it fair? Is it not? You know what? I tell you one thing, if they kick 10,000 in, they give money everywhere in this country. We throw money away at stupid projects. Why not give it to the kids? Because you're going to end up spending it anyway. You'll buy a house, you'll buy something, right? You're going to put it anyway. So what the heck? I'm all for it. I think they should give 10,000. 50, that might be a lot, but help you out, throw you a bone. I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah, college is too expensive anyway. So.
It is. It's ridiculous. Some of the stuff they do, like I tell kids, you just find the cheapest college, the best situation you can, and pay as little as you can and negotiate it. Do whatever you have to do. Work, get out of there as quick as possible. Don't be on the 6-year program. Other questions?
Thank you.
Let's see some guys in chat here. Vanguard target date funds. I like them. They're kind of the default, Andrew. A lot of people are using those as their default. So if you know what a target date fund is, it's based on your retirement age and what we call the glide path. So when you're young, you'll be 100% stock funds. As you get closer to retirement, you're going to be going more bond to take a little risk off the table. So yeah, those are fine. I don't believe in the extra fees. Mike, maybe you can talk. I know you do stuff with hedge funds. I'm not a big fee guy. I like to cut my fees.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I've talked enough already, but I could talk all night about this stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think that to your point, over like a long time period, your average stock picking hedge fund manager significantly underperforms the S&P and a bunch of other metrics. I think what a lot of people miss about that is they do it with very low volatility. So they might return 7% one year when the S&P is up 19, but they don't have all of these crazy flips in the market. But I mean, I think that in a conversation like this, like, I don't know, like the minimum investments for most hedge funds is like 500K, $1 million. The bigger ones might be 25 million. So I think personally, it's out of my own little investment wheelhouse. But I mean, I do agree that like hedge funds usually charge like a 2 and 20 fee. That's the historical fee structure. So 2% management, like, so you put in, you know, $100 and they charge you $2 of that each year just for managing your money. And then they'll take a 20% cut of whatever profits that they give you. So I've seen personally how fees can really add up in that respect. And on that, I also wanted to ask you, and sorry, I got here a little late because of work, so apologies if I missed this. Do you, or like throwing out for the room, does anyone have a take on robo advisors like Wealthfront, like Betterment, that they kind of like have these like fancy quant algorithms, and like Wealthfront, for instance, which I use for some things, charges like a 0.25% management fee, no profit incentive. You put in like your, you know, target like risk profile, your age, all of these things, then it distributes it with ETFs. I think the downside is that you're paying the 0.25% fee for Wealthfront, the management fee, and then you're paying the underlying fees on the ETF. So it's kind of like layers and fees. From my perspective, it's worth it for some stuff because, to your point earlier, it takes away like me having to worry about actively managing my money, and it redistributes automatically. And so far, it's been pretty good. So
Yeah. It seems like the robo's picking up a lot. You get a lot of calls. It's just another way to do it. Maybe to cut out the human person to still do it cheaper than if you had to hire a professional. I don't know. I haven't gone that way. I think, yeah, it's all personal too. Yeah, I think fees though, you got to really think about fees, because fees kill investments long term. You know, and I think some of it's greed. You know, because let's say if you got a ton of money and you think some hedge fund guy is going to make you money, like you got a ton of money. How much more do you need? Just take an index fund and be happy. What the hell? Are you crazy? You know, I hear sports guys all the time. They go broke. Why? Because they get their buddies telling them, I got a great investment. It'll make you a lot of money. And they say, what's that? He says, a bar. Yeah, right. A bar. They're a dime a dozen. They go out of business all the time. You know, put your money when you're making millions, take your 6% and 7% and be happy as hell. I don't understand the greed level, but that's human nature, right? There's behavior again. You know, you think the hedge fund guy is going to do better than everybody else. They may not, but I think it'd be easier just to go, let's index it. We're going to live a good life. We're fine. Let me answer some questions here. An employer 401k. Yeah, we don't have a Roth IRA option in our plan, and I'm kind of looking at that, but we just have the 403b, which is basically a 401k. It's just for nonprofits. So somebody asked about Roth's 401k. I'd have to look at that. There is some new stuff being put out there. I don't want to talk about it because I don't know that much about it. So I'll kind of back off that unless somebody knows anything about a Roth 401k. Best account to save money for a house. Yeah, money market is going to pay a little more than a regular savings or checking. It's liquid, but you're not making much. What's it? 0.5% maybe. I want to say I got Capital One. I was making 0.75. It's probably lower than that now. I just looked at 3-year CDs are literally like paying garbage, under 1%. Some of them, it's so bad. So I don't think you're going to make a lot of money wherever you're saving for a house. But you know what? If you need the down payment, you just got to get it saved as quick as possible. And I'm not sure I'd risk it in the market either. I mean, I think personally, we're overdue for a good correction. And I thought it was coming, and it was like a head fake. It went down yesterday or the day before. It then went down yesterday, and by the end of the day, it recovered it all. So, like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, and who knows? I just keep investing. Other questions? I'm trying to see quickly. Some good questions there.
What what is the range for like a down payment on a house? Like how much money does that tend to be usually? I mean, of course, it's going to depend on the value of the house, but what percentage, I guess, of the house value does that tend to be?
I guess there's all different programs with whether, you're a veteran, FHA mortgage financing. If somebody's in that field, I'm not, my house is paid off, so I'm kind of lucky. That's got me out of debt quickly. We paid it down fast. In my day, we put down, I think I was putting down 5 to 10%. I would bet today with the value of houses, it might be less, but we're in a little bubble here again because house prices are up. So that's kind of scary. You can buy a house and all of a sudden 2 years from now, if house prices come down, you could be underwater. It's a goofy time. People are looking for, like, I know my daughter said, New York City, everybody's leaving the city and they're buying in the suburbs and prices are way up. I get stuff in the mail every week saying, we'll buy your house right now, like cash. Like they want it because I'm on a private drive in Western Howard County. And I'm like, yeah, but where am I going to go? Everything else went way up in price. I would love to, scale back and buy a ranch, and just pay less, but everything's gotten expensive out here. I mean, even a ranch out by me in Western Howard, they're probably in the mid-4s for an old ranch. And I'm like, okay, that's not really a cost savings. I'd like to flip it, be honest with you. Sell my house. I'm on a 1 acre property, take the money, put it into an older place, fix it up and flip it. But the prices have gotten really high out here. So I don't think that's an option for me. Let's see what else we got.
I have a comment.
Okay.
So I work at doing research for a financial newsletter, and I do have some of my own personal investments. And some of the best investment advice I've ever received is from one of the head editors, and it was buy what you know. So if you want to buy individual stocks, if it's a product or service that you're very happy with, odds are other people are happy with it. So like, I drive a Volkswagen. I really like my car. Other people like their cars. So I bought some Volkswagen shares, and they've actually worked out very well for me over the last year. Yeah,
actually in this book, The Psychology of Money, he says the same thing, that people should stick with what they know. And I agree, because that goes back to like your happiness too, right? You start getting out of your comfort zone and you're buying things because your buddy tells you, and then it doesn't work out. You want to kick them, right? Yeah, I agree. Buy what you know. I've been always like a Honda Toyota guy. And I stuck with them, and I've knocked on wood, I've had pretty good luck. But yeah, I think people do buy what they know. Even stocks, if you research some stocks and you know certain things, like, maybe you're a tech guy and you know certain things about tech, you have a little more knowledge than the average person. So that'll help you a little bit. But again, none of us have a crystal ball. I think I saw a hand up. Who is that, Nick? Or is Jake?
Yes, hello, Mr. Prezelski.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. So for better or worse, I've been moved back to living at home at school for the pandemic. And I want to start like making a budget and making some investments, but for better or worse, I don't have to really worry about anything. Like my parents invested well, so I don't have to worry about school. All my credit cards are paid off, never accrue any debt on those. Food. I mean, the only thing I really have to spend money on is cars and any luxury goods that I want. But is there any tips you would have for setting aside income for investing or saving? Like, how do you take out of that? How do you just, like, what are the percentages I should be looking at?
Yeah, if anybody wants to jump in, I'm trying to like set percentages. Like when my daughter set her budget up, we kind of looked at what it cost to live in New York City, what she was making. She had no loans. She didn't need a car. And I just said, let's find an emergency fund. Let's build it. And then let's look at what's left over at the end of a month. And once we did it, we kind of said, okay, you've got at least 200 left over and you have an emergency fund. Let's just go there. And then after about 6 months, she said, I got a lot more left over. I'm not spending what I thought. So we kind of kept upping it. And that's how we did it. Just kind of took it from the first month till 3, 4, 5, 6 months out to see, okay, how's this budget shaking out? Am I sticking to it? Am I not sticking to it? And so Jake, that's not giving you a straight answer, but I'm kind of saying you got to kind of play it month to month. If you're a really good saver, you'll find out you're going to have a lot of excess cash. and you'll be like, you know what, I can put more in. And then you start doing it. If you're not a good saver, then you have to make a decision personally. Am I going to cut back or am I not gonna? Am I going to keep spending, right? And then that's up to you. But yeah, I don't, they always tell you should save 10% to 15% of your salary per paycheck to go to retirement. Not everybody can do that. Some kids have debt, some kids don't. I say get going with whatever you can and start building it. And then if you're doing good and you get a raise, put another percent or 2% in, start building out. And then eventually maybe get a Roth IRA, right? Do as much as you can. You'll be so happy in, 20, 30, 40 years. You'll look back and go like, wow, this worked out great for me.
Thank you.
Other questions? I don't want to hold anybody. So if anybody needs to leave, don't feel offended, pop off, not a big deal, but I'll answer anything. I'm not great with the mortgage stuff because like I said, I haven't had a mortgage in 5 years. I own 3 different places. So I did it, but that's been a while ago and things I'm sure have changed in the mortgage industry since I've done mine. You want to get out of paying mortgage insurance. I know that. I used to hate that. And I think the rule was once you had 20% down or the equity in the house, you didn't pay the mortgage insurance. So that to me was big as not paying that dumb insurance policy. I wasn't big on that thing. Let's see if there's any other questions there. Yeah, I think guys were answering some of that. Anything else? Anybody want to throw anything out? Thoughts? I'm always learning. I can tell you that. I read stuff all the time. I read a lot of books. I watch. I listen to Bloomberg. I'm into all this stuff. GameStop, all the kids want to know about. And I'm like, I'm not touching it, but feel free if you want to try it. It's not my thing. I just like learning as much as I can and trying to make the best decision I can for myself and my wife and my family with what I know. And I'm not right all the time. I make mistakes like anybody else. Before you guys were born, I bought a company called Global Crossing. It was laying fiber optic under the ocean when the internet started. And I thought, damn, this is great. This is going to build it. And then I didn't know that the CEO was a crook and it went to zero. So I lost 4,000 pretty damn quickly and I learned a lot. But then I made money. But you know what? It's when you lose money is when you really learn. When you make mistakes is when you really learn. But I don't like having financial mistakes personally. Those don't feel good to me and they don't go away quickly, especially Max would tell you when I talk about the college process. That thing does not go away if you take the wrong debt and go to the wrong college. That thing is going to hold on to you for a while, and especially if your parents can't help you. It's just, and too many kids are, going to the $60,000 school. I'm not picking on this, but to be a history teacher, that's a bad mistake to make. I wouldn't tell anybody to go to Harvard to be a history teacher.
Hey, he's off the history teachers.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Andrews. Or English or personal finance. I just think you can go to a public school and learn the same stuff, be as good a teacher, and have no debt, period.
Yeah, no debt. That's all good. I didn't go to 60. They didn't have college at 60K when I went to school.
No debt. We want to set you guys up so you can live a nice life and then, give back to charity, give back to some things. I know already, you guys might not know this, but my dad passed away recently. And I'm giving back to my high school Letterman's program. I want them to have some money for it's a public school. They don't have a lot of money and my family's going to give a bunch of money, try to help them out a little bit. So that's a real good feeling when you can give back to, your high school or your church or whoever it is you want to give to. So, you should always think about that. And I hope you guys coming from St. Joe, you kind of keep that in the back of your mind. You want to help other people out. To me, down the road, I definitely want to help people. Like, I hate to say it, but the other day I was coming out of Costco and I saw a lady standing there with a sign up and I handed her $20 out the window. I had cash. That's the only thing I had, $20 in cash. And I gave it to her. And you know what? I don't know if she was legit, but I felt a hell of a lot better. Like I'm trying to help somebody and I can afford to help her. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to sign off. But if there's questions, I'll stay, I'll talk. And I'm sure you guys have some great questions. Great to see all you guys. Go ahead, Jake.
I just had one more question. So I have not a good bit, but most of my money in a savings account. It's like a student one, so it doesn't get that much interest.
Yeah.
But should I be looking to keep it there and then just start adding money from my current paycheck to investing, or should I be looking to reallocate some of that?
I guess it depends how much you're saying you have. If you have a little emergency fund and you can start an account like a Vanguard with one of the index funds and putting it in. If you have a job, you can start a Roth IRA if you have to pay taxes. So you could start a Roth IRA. If you don't, then you'd have to pay taxes on that, but still not bad. You can always do this, Jake. You can start putting $100 a month in for some of these funds. And then if you decide, hey, listen, I have too much in savings, you can write a one-time check or a one-time transfer to them and send $500. You can do that too at any time. They'll take your money. Let's put it that way. They're not going to say no if you want to hit them with an extra 500 every here and now and then. Like my daughter just said to me, I got extra. What should I do? I said, why don't you go in your account and transfer 1,000 to Vanguard? She's like, well, I'm giving 200 a month. I said, yeah, but you got too much in there. What are you going to do with it all? She said, well, it makes me feel good. I said, it's not making anything though. So she's going to do an automatic transfer of 1,000 and just buy more shares. And that's what you're trying to do, just amass shares over the long run.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else, gentlemen? Some good comments, good questions. Again, if you're interested, just listen, watch, pick up a book, read. Like even if you read the Wall Street Journal, everybody thinks it's like a hard paper to read. It's actually really not. My wife loves the Wall Street Journal, and she's not a business person at all. And you just learn by reading and listening. You just pick up. I call it the verbiage. It's all the lingo in personal finance. Once you learn the words, it's actually not that complicated. People make it complicated. Okay. Other than that, if we're done, I'm going to sign off. I'll stop the recording. And I hope everybody has a good night and you got something out of it.